Mhm.
Right. So, hello everyone one more time. It's an absolute pleasure being with you online today on this Friday evening in Georgia, in Tbilisi. We have a wonderful two sessions, which we will be doing with Macmillan Education, with Greg and with Gosha. Before we go and before I hand it to Greg to introduce about himself a little bit more and introduce Gosha to everyone, I'll say a very big thank you to all the teachers who have joined from all over Georgia. I have seen messages from Poti, from Marneuli, from Kutaisi, from Batumi, everywhere, literally. I think whole Georgia is here online with us today. So thank you so much, everyone, for being with us. It's an absolute pleasure from everyone. Yeah, thank you so much. Before we go, I would like to show you the agenda. So there will be two sessions starting now. The first session will be empowering young minds, integrate citizenship, emotional learning, primary education. This will be run by Gosha. She is an absolute brilliant and expert in English language teaching, a wonderful teacher trainer from Macmillan Education. We will have a very short coffee break. We don't leave the in this coffee break. We don't leave the link. We stay online. We stay here, and then Greg will continue on session number 2. This will be how to make sense of global skills behind your teenage classroom doors. Now I would like to introduce to you Gregos, which we know really well. We have been working with Greg for many, many years. He has been in Georgia training teachers for some time, and we would love to have him back again very, very soon. He has a very vast experience in teaching English, being an academic consultant, an author, an international conference speaker, teacher trainer all around Georgia, all around the world. Currently affiliated with Macmillan Education as the head of ELT consultants for our region, which we are very, very lucky. And I would like to say a very big thank you for Greg for accepting this invitation and being with us today. Greg, would you like to say a couple of words?
I certainly would. Well, thank you very much for such a warm and lovely opening and the beautiful introduction, Misha. I do indeed have a very soft spot for Georgia. I've been to Georgia a couple of times, I think. I mean, actually physically been to Georgia, and not just Tbilisi. We also took trips, school trips, observing classes in various places. I remember Gori in particular, where we had the most fascinating time. So it's always a great pleasure to be doing things for you guys. Thanks to the wonderful and long-lasting cooperation that we have had with English Book for I don't know how many years. Right. I was only been, I became a part of this history where it already had been and had a rather long history. So it's wonderful to be a small part of something so long-lasting and so powerful. I know that there's been a lot of really exciting, good things that have happened educationally for Georgian teachers and, of course, for Georgian students through the partnership that we have had over the years. So it's a great pleasure and true honor to be here again, particularly that I have a most wonderful companion to introduce to you tonight, a colleague originally from Poland. We met, Gosha and I, Gosha, goes back a long, long time, doesn't it not? Yeah, I probably shouldn't say because, you're a lady.
I don't care. We go back, many years.
We go back, yes, rather a long time. I remember the very first session that I saw Gosha do at a big national conference in Poland, and I still remember how blown away I was with the creativity, with the sort of, the solid grounding that Gosia demonstrated then, and ever since, as a teacher, a really, solid practicing teacher of different age groups and different proficiency levels, but particularly younger learners. That's what Gosia has specialized in, and also contributed to certain course book projects for Macmillan. So she's now an author as well as a teacher trainer with Macmillan. And if I may share a little the sort of anecdote about Gosia, several years ago, she moved over to Hamburg, Germany. So that's where she is now based, and that's where she teaches English, although, given the world that we live in these days, a lot of that teaching actually involves online students, does it not, Gosia? So in a sense, it does not matter where one is based, because you just organize your students across borders, so to speak. But as I said, Gosia is above all a super experienced, creative, inspiring and inspirational a teacher and teacher trainer. So I'm sure that I am leading you in very, very capable, enthusiastic hands. So that's all for me, from me for now. And I think over to Gosia, right? So that we don't eat too much into Gosia's slot.
I'm stopping share. I'm just stopping sharing my screen. Okay. And I think, Gosia, this is you. Thank you so much again from English Book Education as well for being with us. We are privileged to have you here.
All right, thank you very much. Let me just quickly start my presentation. Let's see if you can all see my slides.
Yes, everything looks fantastic, Gosia. So I'll turn off my video stream so people can concentrate on you exclusively, and I'll be back in about 15 minutes.
All right, and I will do my best to live up to this beautiful introduction. The pressure is here, but I'll do my best to deliver. All right, so hello everyone. I am super honored to be here because Georgia has a very special place in my heart for many reasons. One of them being that I used to spend a lot of time in your country, and I just can't wait to go back. And I'm very honored to be speaking to such a wonderful audience because, as I said, the topic is very close to my heart, and the country has a very special place in my heart. So it's just like a wonderful, wonderful time for me. Okay. So in my session, we are going to talk about empowering young minds. We're going to talk about young learners, not very, very young learners, but still young learners. So we're going to focus on children aged, let's say, 8, 9 to, let's say, 10, 11. But all of the ideas I'll be sharing and all the knowledge I'll be sharing here is pretty universal. So you can adjust it to your context. You can use it with younger children. You can use it with older students, so bear that in mind. And we are going to talk about integrating so-called global citizenship and emotional or socio-emotional learning in primary education. And I'd like to start with a question. I'm very happy to see that you're very active in the chat window, and this is where I would like you to answer the question, if you may. When you think about your profession, what do you appreciate most about being a teacher? Either in general, being a teacher, or specifically being a language teacher. I'm really curious to see it. Let me also open the chat window so I can also see your answers. So think about something that makes you happy about going to work. I know it's not every day. Sometimes we have worse days. Sometimes we're, overworked, but I already see some answers. Children's unconditional love. That is true. Being crazy about kids, creativity. This is what I love as well. Absolutely. And I think even though being a teacher is probably one of the hardest jobs in the world, and I really mean what I'm saying now, I think it's also very rewarding. So I would like to share a couple of thoughts that I had when I reflected on why I wanted to become a teacher. So the first thing I thought about is that I am generally really interested in linguistics. My friends would say that I'm a bit of a nerd. So I really get to share my passion with my students, and I really love to see that they change their attitude. They actually start to enjoy the lessons. They start, not the lessons, you know, they start to enjoy languages and all the pleasure that learning languages brings. And this is something that I get to do for a living. So I think it's just amazing. Another thing is on a bit more personal side. I remember when I was first a child, then a teenager, I was very lucky with my teachers. And back then, when I went to school, which was in the early 90s, a lot of times we translated songs in our English lessons. And music and generally art has always been really important to me. And learning the language and the possibilities that my teachers showed me of like experiencing different emotions using this tool to translate certain songs was an incredibly important thing to me, because it really helped me deal with my difficult teenage emotions, and it really opened the door to a lot of self-reflection and a lot of, you know, things in my head. So I want to give my students the same opportunity. I'm sure that if you look at your students, all of them have their favorite bands, favorite music, favorite songs. So this is favorite cartoons maybe, so, or books. So this is the opportunity that we are giving them. Another thing that is extremely important to me personally is that I feel that I'm actively contributing to the quality of my students' future. Because nowadays, more often than not, speaking a foreign language or speaking English fluently, in many contexts, if you apply for a job, it's not something super special anymore. This has become, or is still becoming, just a standard requirement, you know? So I'm glad that I can be a person who somehow facilitates, you know, hopefully getting a job in the future to my students. Now, another thing is that it's very likely that the new generation, the alpha generation, as some people refer to them, will move around even more than we do at the moment. And I am a millennial, so I never thought back then when I was a child that at some point I will live in a foreign country and English will become the language that I use to communicate with my family, because my nephew, his first language is English. They live in London, but also my partner with whom I speak English on a daily basis, and all the friends I have here. English has become the first language for me to build relationships at this moment of my life. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my teachers. And I want to be the person, I want to be the teacher who gives the same opportunity to my students. I want to open the door to finding a job, finding friends, or finding love in possibly a different place. Maybe not, but I want to, you know, open this door for them and make sure that they have this option. And last but not least, to me, in being a teacher, something that I just absolutely adore is the aha moment. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Is this moment when, you know, your students, they struggle with something and then suddenly it clicks. And there's this aha, and suddenly it becomes easy. And I love those aha moments. I think they're the most rewarding thing of being a teacher for me personally, because of course you might have different you know, different things that make you appreciate your job, but those are my personal, this is my personal list. And now, the reason I'm talking about it is because if you think about all the things I listed, and also if you look into the chat window, and if you see, you know, what other people are saying, I think you will quickly realize that the reasons we give for appreciating the jobs we have is all of them are related to our social life or our emotional life, or generally, as I like to say, just life, because I believe that life is mostly, you know, the emotions that we experience and the social interactions that we have and the relationships with other members of the society that we build. But at no point have I heard from any teacher that they love their job because they get to talk about present simple and they get to teach the grammatical rules, or they get to conduct tests and they get to, you know, check the tests and give grades. I never hear it from any teachers ever. I also never heard that it's just, you know, an easy job, easy money, you know, life's easy, I earn a lot, I don't work much, simply because this is just not true. Those are not the reasons that we do what we do. And I think we really can agree that we as people are both social and emotional creatures, and we live in a very globalized world, and so do our students. And we cannot turn the blind eye to it. This is just the world we live in, or we are living in at the moment. And that's why this topic is so important to me. And I really believe that it's important to a lot of you, because it's just such a personal thing, right? This is something that we experience on daily basis, and social, emotional, and global learning and education is also something that I really strongly believe in, and it sort of touches on all the values that are personally very important to me in my private life. So since we're talking about social emotional education, I want to make sure that we're on the same page and that we are talking about the same thing, because it's a huge topic, it's vast, and let's establish the definition. So what is this social and emotional learning? What is this global citizenship? And according to the sources, social and emotional learning, which is very often called simply SEL or SEL, I'm going to be calling it SEL, all right, just so it's a little bit easier, because social emotional learning is a bit of a tongue twister. So this is an educational method that aims at fostering social and emotional skills within school curricula. So in common practice, rather than focusing only on math, science, reading skills, and so on, we also emphasize the social and emotional skills to the same degree. So we take into consideration that a big part of human life and the process of education is also the emotions that the students experience while being in the system of education, and the social skills and social behaviors that they learn, and the bonds that they build with other members of the society. So the whole reason this is part of the social and emotional learning is that it also prepares students to become more knowledgeable, because they will have the tools to do it, to become responsible for their decisions, and to understand the consequences of them, but also becoming caring and empathetic members of the society when they reach adulthood. So in other words, just to maybe rephrase it a little bit, so SEL is the process through which young people, but also adults, and generally whoever is, learning, or whoever is part of the society, they acquire and apply the knowledge, and they develop skills, and they develop certain attitudes in order to build healthy identities, to understand who they are, to manage their emotions, to know how to achieve personal, but also collective goals, not just for me, but also maybe for the street that I live on, or the school that I go to. It also helps students feel and show empathy for others, and it helps them establish supportive relationships that last for a very long time. And it also teaches them how to make responsible decisions. So we take the knowledge, the skills, the attitudes, and we apply them to develop the things you can see on the right side, the things I have just mentioned. So it sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Like, this is the perfect world that I want to live in, especially if we take into consideration the fact that in this very, very globalized world, we need to build communities, and we have to be aware of ourselves, but we also have to be aware of the surroundings, because again, more often than not, we interact, be it privately or professionally, with people from different cultures, people who speak different languages, people who grew up with completely different backgrounds. And we live in the world in which this is just like everywhere around. It's like it starts the moment you open any application on your phone, you turn the TV, or like sometimes even talk to your colleagues at work. So I believe it's already quite clear why social and emotional education is such a great direction and such a great route to take. But I also would like to show you some research that proves the point. And this is like proper scientific research from, I believe, 2023, if I'm not wrong, maybe 22, I think 2023. And a lot of students were tested over quite a long period of time, students who were part of this SEL program. And here are the results. And I don't think they are surprising, but I think they are very, very important. So first of all, the students, they had much better academic results. They just did better at school. And not only did they do better at school, but they also did much better socially, right? So they had, you know, better social interactions. Now, another thing that happened is that not only did they do better at school, but they also improved attendance. And this was like clearly visible in places where, you know, the dropout rates are quite high for various reasons. There are different reasons children cannot receive education. Sometimes, well, okay, there are different reasons. It's not that important why, but generally the attendance has improved and also their engagement in learning have improved. So I think those things are also connected. If a child is, or a teenager is enthusiastic about going to school because it's interesting, because it's personal, and because they feel they can really be heard, understood at school, then why would they skip it, right? Another thing that happened is the students presented much higher self-esteem and much more optimism. And again, it makes a lot of sense to me, because if you are in the environment in which your mistakes are not criticized, but your mistakes are welcome and are seen as a learning opportunity, then when you make a mistake, rather than giving up, you again see it as a learning opportunity. And last but not least, the students also manifested much less anxiety and stress and depression. And these are the things that we have to take seriously, because they are unfortunately more and more common among very, very young people. And the students also built much better and stronger relationships with their peers and their teachers. So I think it's clear that there's so many benefits to that. It's hard to say no to this method, or at least give it a try. It's hard not to fall for it. I personally love it, and I think you do too. And if not yet, then by the end of the session, you will. So we talked a little bit about the theory, but I would like to now think about what it really means for your classroom. Because, you know, it all sounds great, like this is the world we want to live in, I believe. But then, you know, it's Monday, you go to your classroom and you go, okay, so what do I do with it, right? Because I have, I don't know, 10, 15, 20, 30 students in front of me. And now, you know, it can be a little bit confusing. So in order to think about it on a more like local level, so to speak, an everyday level, let's establish a couple of things. What you're looking at the moment is a so-called CASEL framework, which shows 5 core SEL, so social and emotional learning competencies. So we have self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, so what's around, relationship skills, and also responsible decision making. So keep them in mind, and I will keep reminding you about it. And also, I do understand that at this point, you may be thinking, because, you know, I'm also a teacher and I also teach every day, Monday to Friday. So sometimes when I, you know, think about those beautiful things I can do, I feel a little bit overwhelmed, because I go like, okay, it all sounds great, but, you know, then on Monday, again, I go to my classroom, I've got 30 children, 5 of them have a conflict that I have to help them resolve. And I also have to check the register, and I have to prepare the tests, and I still have to check the essays from the last week. And, you know, there's still some paperwork I have to catch up with. And generally, I've got so much to do running the course. This just seems like another thing I have to think about. Now, my most important rule is that I really like efficiency, and I really understand how it feels to be overwhelmed and to simply not have the time to do things. And the way I plan my lessons, the way I design also my sessions and the ideas that I share, I always make sure that they are very efficient in terms of the preparation time. So the good news here is that, yes, it might be something that is new to you, or if it isn't new to you, it might be something that overwhelms you a little bit, because again, it's another thing to consider on top of millions of things you have to consider on a daily basis. But also, I'm going to show you that while it's incredibly important to keep, you know, the self framework and those principles in your mind, nowadays, more often than not, if you use modern materials, if you use high quality materials, and if you ask yourself and your students a couple of questions, all those things that we have just discussed that have so many great, fantastic benefits, they might actually happen by the way. So incorporating these cell elements in your lessons, it doesn't have to mean that on top of preparing your lessons, for each lesson, you would have to spend additional 30 minutes to think about, okay, so how am I going to develop also like this, skill? Because if you choose good materials, or if you prepare the materials well, or if you look at your old materials and you adapt them well and you ask the right questions, this is going to happen with practically zero preparation time. So before you get discouraged, stay with me until the end of the session and you will see that these things you're already doing and they're already happening. And what I want you to do is be more aware of that. I want to give you some inspiration. I want to give you some ideas. I want to show you how to do it without spending additional time on preparation. So let's have a look at some more specific examples. And I took a book, level 4, the book is called Global Stage, and I took the first 4 topics, units, that are going to be discussed during the school year. So we have, let's start with art, how long is it, and so on and so forth. You can see it on the slide. And if you think about those topics, if you look at them, and if you compare them to the topics of your English lessons, let's say for people who are more like my age, 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, I think you can agree that they're completely different. Let's look at the second one. How long is it? So it's a lesson in which we learn about like some experiments, but also time, calendar, century, decade, like, these words. But on top of just telling the time or, just learning the words, we also have some interesting questions like, what does it mean? Oh, no, sorry. Why do we measure time? Now, this is not a question I was ever asked when I was a school student, but these are the questions you will come across more and more often. And actually, we might have a look at a more specific example. We're going to narrow it down to one lesson, one unit in a moment. And we are also going to confront it with those 5 core principles that we talked about. These are taken from this wheel that I showed you a moment ago. So let's just take the first unit, the first lesson, the school year starts, you open the book, this is what you start with. And the lesson is about art. And one question that appears in this lesson is, it's actually like sort of like a question that you work on in one whole lesson of this unit, is why is art important to people? So now my question is, because this very question, why is art important to people? I believe it already addresses some cell competencies. And now my question to you is, which ones? What do you think? You don't know anything about the lesson. You don't know what vocabulary you're going to be teaching. You don't know what grammar you're going to be teaching. Let's forget about it for a moment. Just this very question and the context of art. So you can write it in the chat window, like, do you think there is a potential for developing self-awareness or maybe social awareness? I know it's a little bit vague at this point, but that's fine. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty in a moment, right? But let me open the chat. All right. So yeah. Can you see like how, oh, yes. I see that a lot of you say that all of them can be addressed. I mean, absolutely, of course. But also, I see social awareness. Yes. Well, pretty much, whichever one you list, you're probably going to be right. Something that I see here immediately without even seeing the lesson, just by looking at the context. I take a book, I open it, I see this, topic, and I see this question. The first thing I notice is, well, definitely there needs to be a lot of self-awareness, because if you want to discuss why art is important to people, first you want to ask yourself some questions. For instance, what kind of art do I like? Or how do I feel when I experience art? Maybe some of you had this experience, we're talking about our students, but you can also think about yourself, the experience in which you experience some form of art and it gave you very strong emotions. The other day, I heard a song, the language of which I couldn't understand because I don't speak it, but there was something about it that made me cry immediately. I just you know, burst into tears immediately. So people can experience art in a completely different way, right? So you're becoming more aware of your feelings when you're exposed to art. Do I have any favorite artists, right? Or do I have any art at home? Because maybe I have some pictures, right? Or maybe I create art and then my parents hang it on the walls. But then I also believe there's quite a lot of social awareness potential in this topic. Because once you start discussing like what kind of art I like, how do I feel when I experience it, and so on, you're going to notice that your peers, I'm addressing you as if you were my students, right? But you know what I mean. You're going to notice that other people will have different preferences. People in different countries will create different kinds of art, maybe, right? There's also this folk art, this local art. And people would have different reasons for like, you know, putting a lot of sort of like giving art a lot of importance in their lives, because maybe they collect arts. Some people collect arts actually and art pieces. So, you know, so this is when we start to become like moving on from how I feel about art to how people feel about art. And those two things might be and are actually likely to be very, very different. And this is so. And speaking about this question, why is art so important to people? Whichever materials I'm working with, when I want to add like more value to my lesson and I want to make it a little bit more like, I would say, cell oriented, there are three questions they can always ask and they will help you. The first question is why. Again, whichever topic you discuss, the first question will be, why are we doing this? Let's say you discuss the topic is with very young learners, giving directions, you know, go straight ahead, turn left and right, and so on. Why is it important to be able to give and understand, you know, directions, right? And of course, like, because maybe sometimes you go visit another city and you're looking for a place and there is no internet. The next question would be how. So again, you're moving on from like this personal experience and this thinking like, why do I even do it, into how people do it. So how can you find your way when you're lost, for example? How do people navigate their surroundings in different places, right? Do they use the same methods, or maybe they use completely different methods? This is something I noticed lately. When I still lived in Warsaw, when I was talking, like telling someone where I was, I would always use street names. So I would say, oh, I'm the corner of this and that street. But in Hamburg, that's not how people do it, because Hamburg has a very big metro network. So here, always tell the nearest metro station. See, so again, this is something that already makes it interesting and shows our students that things are different in different places. Also, what does it mean to me? Now, this is giving personal examples and showing personal examples and understanding the value of what I'm learning. So I might be learning a topic as simple as just giving directions. But what does it mean to me? Well, maybe I have an experience of being lost somewhere and I had to ask for directions. This is my experience in Georgia, actually. A couple of times I was lost in many different places and I had to ask how to get somewhere because I didn't have a smartphone with me and I had to ask people. So, or maybe someone came up to you and asked you for directions, and that was the first opportunity for you to speak English to a person who didn't speak Georgian. So you see, just by asking these questions, the lesson already changes the dimension, so to speak. So let's have a look at another lesson. So, and let's now use these questions for a specific topic of senses. So why, how, and what does it mean to me? So the topic is sentence. We're gonna learn words like, you know, feel, hear, smell, taste, touch, watch, see, and so on. And we're gonna be talking about experiencing things sensually. And the question posed here is one sense more important than another? So you have a little bit more context now. Let's go through these three questions. Why? Why are senses important, right? I don't think it's something that children often think about, but they are important, right? Because that's how you experience the world around you. Something I would do in my lesson here, I would probably blindfold the children and ask them to experience their surroundings without seeing them. Or I would ask them to block their nose and try to eat something and check if they can still feel the taste of it. You know, so senses are important. That's how we get all the nice things in life, right? How do people use their senses? Do they all use them in the same way? Because, you know, maybe some people have very good hearing, and that's why they become musicians. So maybe they use their hearing more often than other senses, right? Because, and they nurture their hearing because it's their job. Or maybe, you know, it means something personal to you. So the last question, what does it mean to me? Because you've got a friend or a family member who cannot see, who is a blind person. Or maybe you know someone who can't hear. And then they would use different senses to communicate messages. So keep these questions in mind, and let's jump to, again, this wheel that I now put in those tiles here. And let's circle back to this castle framework. And again, think about what you have just talked about, and think about, you know, the skills that, you know, this topic has the potential to develop. Now, of course, all of them, you can always develop all of these skills, but think about something that, like the first skill that comes to your mind, the more natural maybe thing, the most intuitive thing that comes to your mind. I'm opening the chat window to check what you're writing. There's so many messages. All right. So I see that someone wrote self-management. In what way? I'm going to ask you. All right. So try to also think about how. All right. So how these skills could be developed in this context. Now, we don't unfortunately have the time to like discuss, you know, things like one-on-one. So let me just move on, but think about it and bear it in mind, keep it in mind while I show you my take on it. And my take is that, of course, there's always self-awareness. How do I see or feel or hear things? There's, of course, social awareness, because you start to realize that some people, you know, they have to rely on different senses because, for instance, they cannot see or they cannot hear, or maybe they're in a wheelchair and they cannot feel with their legs, right? So, you know, so you start actually teaching the children about the global world and about the, you know, the environment they live in. And you start showing them things that they might not be thinking about much if they don't have a personal experience of, for example, having someone with a disability in their class or in their family. I also believe it contributes to developing relationship skills, because relationships is also understanding other people. Relationships are built on empathy and understanding that similar things can make us feel different, for instance, also develops this sense of empathy that is incredibly important to, you know, to build close friendships. So that's my take on it. But I would like to hear more ideas from you. And this time we're going to focus on even more specific things. I would like us to think how we can take the cell approach and use it with these very common topics I'm going to show you in a moment. Whichever book you open, you're always going to have the topic of, you know, school. And if it's the first grade, you're going to learn or teach, in your case, words such as like a pencil case or like, I don't know, a pen, a ruler, a pencil sharpener, and so on. And then on a bit higher levels, like for example, here, I believe it's grade 3, you will teach things like subject names, like science, English, blah, blah, also like break time, homework, I don't know, lunchtime, and so on. So look at the target vocabulary. We're moving on to more like language here. Look at the target vocabulary and think about some past lessons that you have already taught on this topic. And think about how the cell approach might work here and how you could develop these 5 things listed, you know, on the slide in the context of being at school. And in a moment, I will show you 5 different activities that I personally would use in this context. And then I'm going to show you something that hopefully you're going to like. All right, so, all right, let's see. Maybe you can share in the chat window some ideas, like some activities that you've already done with your students, you know. I won't see all the answers because there are just so many of them, but I'm sure that other people will see your answers, and that can also be very, very inspiring. I see that Irina wrote decision making. Yeah, so for example, you have to decide, you know, which courses to take or which extracurriculars to take, right? So this is one thing that, you know, one activity that you could do in order to develop the skill. Decisiveness, exactly. So making decisions, yes, I absolutely agree. And it's kind of similar to what Irina has said, right? Oh, create your dream timetable. Exactly. So this is self-awareness. What would be good for me? But maybe also, you know, relationship skills and decision making, because you have to consult it with the other students, because you have to make a mutual decision, because you all go to the same class. Absolutely. Your ideas are fantastic. And I agree with these things 100%. I would like to show you my ideas and hopefully show you a couple of activities that will maybe inspire you. Now, as I said, rather than showing you like one very specific activity, I would like to show you something a little bit more general that I hope you can take, and starting Monday, you can use in your classroom immediately. So the context is school, and I want to develop self-awareness. I want to work on the self-awareness of my students. So the way I see it is I talk with them about some subjects that they're good at or they're not good at. And the activity I'll choose here is I'll choose voting. And I really like in my lessons to vote. I really like for my students to see that it's perfectly fine that someone has a different opinion. It's perfectly fine that my friends are different to me. So this is one thing, right? You have to first take, your students have to take a step back and reflect. Maybe there are some things I'm actually not good at, but it's fine. Now, this is not the school that I grew up in. My school was very competitive and you had to be good at everything, you know, because otherwise you fail. So you had to be good at each and every subject. I think it's incredibly important to teach our students that they might be good at English, but maybe not so good at maths, or they might be good at learning vocabulary, but maybe reading is a bit of a challenge for them. So let them express themselves, right? Let them show, let them give them the opportunity to be a little bit more aware of how they feel. Now, then we move on to self-management. This is something that also a lot of you mentioned in the chat window. So when it comes to self-management and managing also your time, your schedule, you know, your workload and so on, I would probably think about talking in another lesson about how we learn for tests, because there are different methods we can use. And the activity here, brainstorming, because I think if we are coming up with different strategies like learning for tests, brainstorming is a perfect opportunity for children to learn from their peers. So then, when we talk about social awareness, the topic that comes to my mind in the context of school would be schools around the world, right? So my school in, let's say, in Batumi in Georgia looks like that. And in my school, because it's in Batumi, Georgia, after lessons, we go to the beach and we play beach volleyball. Now, for the students who live in, let's say, Tbilisi, this is not an option, right? Because they don't have the sea there, right? So, and for students who live in Poland, like it looks completely different because maybe they live in the Lake District, or maybe after school, they don't do sports because after school, they do other things, right? So here, you know, I want to show my students that people do things differently in different places, and all of them are equally important. Then I move on to relation. Sorry, I didn't mention. So the activity that I like to use for more informative texts is usually on lower levels. I'm talking level like 2, 3, like all the way up to level like 5, 6. The texts, when they're divided into paragraphs, are organized in a way that if you cover one paragraph, you can still understand the rest. So what I do is I divide the students into groups, and each group gets, or each student, right, gets a different part of the text, just one short paragraph with just one piece of information. So for example, one group gets the paragraph about students in Australia, another group about students in Italy, and the third group about students in Georgia, right? They read their texts and then they exchange information, right? So I think it's perfect for reading. It's one of my favorite reading activities. So so for this specific thing I want to develop, it will definitely work. Now, relationship skills. So since we're talking about relationships that, as we have mentioned before, are based on empathy, I would probably work around the topic of helping a new classmate. And the way I do it is definitely role plays, because role plays and being another person for the 2 minutes of, you know, a dialogue that we're presenting to the rest of the class, they also contribute to higher empathy, because for a moment you are someone else, and because they're someone else for a moment, you understand their position better. So in this case, I would have like a role play. We have a new student in our class, and what can we do to make them feel welcome? And finally, responsible decision making. In this case, I would probably think about like a school group project, right? So let's say there is a project in your school in which you organize a day for the parents. Probably ask my students to do some sort of art project. Maybe it's a poster with some information in which the students have to, you know, decide which information they can put, which piece of information they can put on a poster, because there's only so much space. Or maybe I'll ask them to make leaflets, or maybe ask them to make some sort of like an information board and, you know, stuff like that, but definitely some sort of like an art project. Okay, now, this is something that I just thought about when I thought about teaching about school. And this is something that I would do if, for example, like one teacher was sick and I was a substitution teacher, and I, let's say, have no books, no materials, I only have flashcards, right? So I could work with these topics, but it took me a moment to come up with it. I had to sit, reflect, and, you know, also like if I don't have any materials, it would take me some time to prepare it. But if you look closely at, again, modern materials for, you know, teaching English and learning English, you can already see a lot of examples of activities that are linked directly to what we have talked about. So, of course, if you have the time, if you have the enthusiasm, or if you feel like it, I encourage you to think about different activities you do in your classroom and think, you know, how to make them meaningful in a given context. But if you don't have this time, and I believe most of us don't really have this time, especially on a daily basis, look what happens when when the materials you use or materials you prepare yourself, because I'm sure there are also teachers who prepare their own materials here, when they take this into consideration. So we have a story about Noor's first day at school, and it's a story about a girl who goes to school for the first time. No, sorry, not for the first time, but like she joins a new class, and, you know, she doesn't talk to people, to her peers. She keeps looking outside the window, and there's a whole debate, like, you know, maybe she's not feeling comfortable, maybe she's shy. So relationship skills for certain, but also this social awareness. There are certain children who jump right into making friends. Some of us need more time, right? Also, a learning to learn. This is probably one of my favorite things in the world, because I also talk quite a lot about developing cognitive skills. So this is part of what I see as self-management. So giving children the opportunity to learn how they can acquire knowledge, how they can memorize things, how they can revise things, how they can find information, and so on. So in this case, it was the topic of school, reading a text. I don't understand the text, or I don't understand some words. What can I do? I have 3 options, and your students can choose what to do. Be it use a dictionary, ask a friend, ask a teacher. They may practice a little bit. So this already is part of like helping them manage, you know, their work, right? If they come across an obstacle. Then also more self-awareness. So we have a dialogue in which you say, I'm good at this, but I'm not good at that. This is similar to the idea that I had, right? So I did it as voting. Here we have a dialogue. Dialogue probably has a higher linguistic value also, because it's drilling and practicing the expressions, right? And then we also have act out the play, Charlie's homework, right? So again, since we're acting out, we are practicing empathy, relationship skills, right? And yeah, and in this case, we are helping someone with their homework. Finally, I also found, again, the same context, we're still at school. I found an exercise that I liked a lot. And it's the one on the bottom, work in pairs, choose a club for Lucy and Sam. Now choose a club for you. So there are different school clubs, and you're not supposed to choose the club that you like the most. I mean, you are, but later. But before you do, you have to listen to your peers or read a fragment in the book and decide which club is best for your friends. So you really have to understand what they need. And in order to do so, you really have to keep your ears open, right? So this is a responsible decision-making process, right? Because if you choose the wrong club for them, they're going to be unhappy about it. And there are the consequences, right? So you see, again, this is something, well, wait, let me jump to the previous slide. Okay, this is something that I used to do. This is something that I still do, but not so often. But this is something I like to rely on. And remember, in a lot of good materials, in all good materials, you will find the tasks like that. And I think what you can do or start doing, from now on, is look at them in a slightly different way. Look at them and think which skills they develop, right? If you're not sure, ask the questions: why, how, what it means to me. Now, I have another example just to show you, but through this one, we are actually going to go a little bit faster, but just to show you that it works for all topics, really. So in this case, we have a slightly higher level. It's level 5, and the topic is in safe hands. So we're going to talk about accidents and injuries. And again, if you look at the skills you want to develop, and if you look at the topic, you might come up with a lot of different games and different activities you could do. So in this case, what I would do is teach self-awareness by having my students talk about their past injuries. For example, by playing a miming game. Those are just examples, right? So, you could do it like that. You could do it differently, of course, as long as self-awareness is a part of it. Now, self-management, my first aid kit, right? So you have to, organize yourself somehow. In this case, organize your meds to make a first aid kit. I'll probably play something like a mystery box. So my students would put a hand in a box full of first aid, equipment, and they would have to touch it, feel it, and say what it is. When they guess, they can take it to their first aid kit, and then they would present the kit. First aid at school, which helps with social awareness, like being aware that my peers might have problems, and one day I might need to help them at school. And I'll probably make some sort of an informative poster with my students. Relationship skills. Now, if you think about health, injuries, I think it's only natural to think about helping sick people, helping people with disabilities, helping people who have some problems related to health. And again, my favorite thing here would be a role play. It can be, but doesn't have to be. It can be a poster. It can also, I wouldn't make it a miming game because there's too high potential for playing jokes, and I don't think it's a joking matter. But you could do also a picture book here, for example. And finally, when it comes to responsible decision-making, I'm thinking about, okay, responsibility, health, injuries, how can we stay safe? Right? And I would probably do a quiz game here. I don't know if you use tools like Kahoot or Quizlet with your students, but you could. And it also can be just you can have a set of questions that you prepare beforehand and you just ask them to your students. Or you can just honestly, even if you're good at, thinking on your feet, you can just come up with these questions as the game goes, and you can assign points, or, you can just nominate a student to give you the answer and have a bit of a quiz game about responsibility. All right, now here's what happens in the materials. These were my ideas. Here's what I came across when I then looked into the materials. And you can see that we have a picture from a listening task about two children going to the swimming pool. And there's a whole debate if it's safe, and if they're prepared, if there's a lifeguard, if they can swim, and so on and so forth, right? So responsible decision making, right? You teach your students that they have to make responsible decisions because their lives quite literally depend on them. We also have something that I love, which is brainstorming and making a mind map, which I believe also contributes to this self-management, right? So, and also decision making. So you decide how to plan it. It helps you organize your writing. It helps you organize the discussion here. Now, again, in most good books, in all good books, you would find something like that, some projects that are a little bit more analytical and help you organize the skills, the knowledge, the notes, and so on. If not, a mind map is always a safe thing to do. You just need a piece of paper. And we also see some personal stories, the story of my scar. So this is similar to what I've mentioned, showing talking about your injuries. We also have a lot of empathy, self-awareness, and social awareness here. For example, how do volunteers contribute to our well-being? And what does it mean to be a volunteer? Like, what are you good at? Who could volunteer in our classroom? And so on, so forth. All right. So let's say you feel inspired, and now you want to take it further. So one more thing that I want to show you, because I believe that you already feel how amazing it is to have students interested in your lessons, and to make them interested, it has to be personal. So I want to show you one more thing, and this is something that you can do throughout the whole school year, and you can do it regularly. I usually would do it as sort of like a classroom routine or some habits that I also want to build in my students. So you could do a thing called daily check-ins. I mean, I call them daily check-ins. I think they're generally called check-ins, feelings, check-ins, and so on. So you might have this habit in which before the lesson starts, each student has to come up to the board, like you can see in the picture, and you draw their mood. And then you can see how many of them are feeling good, how many are not. Maybe someone is angry, you can address it, right? So the students, before they enter the lesson, they have to be mindful already. They have to think about how they feel. And yeah, you can also maybe prepare some forms that you can print out, but you don't have to. You can just use your board, or you can just have a short discussion. You can just give them 2 pieces of paper, red and green, and ask yes/no questions like, are you feeling good today? Green. Are you feeling hungry? Green. Are you feeling sleepy? Red. So there are options here. Another thing you can do is speaking cards. And speaking cards, I think they are just a phenomenal tool because they help you address issues, or sort of like preemptively, talk about some issues that might appear later on in your lessons. So such questions like here, for example, where you talk about some problems you have in lessons and you want to solve them, they help your students understand that they're powerful. And if they're in a situation like in the card C, in which in pair work, you always work with the same partner, but she doesn't speak to you, she doesn't know how to do the exercises. By doing this, you also teach your students that problems can be solved, and problems have to be addressed, and situations can improve. So for instance, if you have noticed that there's a conflict in your class, and for the last 3 weeks, the atmosphere has been a little bit off, what you can do is you can, for instance, prepare speaking cards about solving arguments, in which your students will have to reflect, will have to look around, will have to empathize, and come up with a solution to the problem they might not even know they have. But you see it because you're their teacher, and you know, right? And of course, by using speaking cards, you can also model some good behaviors. Like, for instance, this is a set of cards in which there's a new student in the class, and you think of ways to be friendly to the student and help the student make friends. And all of these speaking cards, by the way, they come from this program called Macmillan Change Makers, and they have this free resource bank for teachers. And there are lesson plans and cards and resources built around social and emotional learning and also global citizenship. Check it out if you have a moment. That's where I took them from.
Gosia, I need to.
Oh, are we running out of time already?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay. So, right. So let me just sum up. All right. And let me just finish with 2 sentences. I want to finish this session with you remembering that good ideas inspire more good ideas. So look at your materials, look at the materials you work with, materials you have worked with, the materials you've prepared, listen to your students. Let your creativity, take over sometimes and stay open to what you hear because you can use it in your lessons 100%. Ask yourself these questions: why, how, and what it means to me. And at the end of the session, during the coffee break, ask yourself 3 more questions inspired by one of the books. It's Global Stage and the feedback form from the end of each unit. Think about the things you learned in this session. Think about some questions you still have after the session, and think about one opinion that you now have. Do some reflection, do some social emotional learning for yourself, and thank you very much. And well, I hope that now you feel inspired, and on Monday you can, give it a go, give it a try, and let the other teachers know how it went and how it worked for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a wonderful session, and I'm sure the teachers really enjoyed this. I think I learned so much. So thank you.
Thank you very
was
much.
really, really useful. Now we are moving to session number 2. Let's give a couple minutes to refresh and for a coffee or for a tea. And Greg, would you like to share your presentation before we kick off?
Yes, I will. So I am gonna be all ready. With luck.
Amazing.
All good?
All good.
Excellent. So about how much time shall we have for the break now?
I would say let's give everyone a couple of minutes, like 3-4 minutes to grab a coffee because we are a little bit over
Okay.
time. And we will be back. So everyone stay here, grab the tea, and we'll start in 3-4 minutes.
Excellent. I've got my coffee already, so I'm not going anywhere.
And what is the temperature in Prague now?
Super.
There was a question about certificates. We will be giving out this. We will be sending the certificates after the session. So it would be the week commencing Monday. So we will be sending out to the attendees on the email both certificates. Greg, I think we are ready to start. I think people are ready.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna, get my jacket off and get seriously to work. Welcome everybody to the second session. If you were here for Gosia's first session, I hope that you are already warmed up to the kind of global idea of global skills, particularly as related to the realities of a young learner's classroom. That was Gosia's area. I am going to move up one age group, so to speak, and I'm going to look at how to make sense of those global skills behind your teenage. So two things. First of reference to teenagers, I am going to be looking at slightly older learners than Gosha did. And the second thing is that the word yours in bold that I have included in my subtitle. And the reason is that I firmly believe, as I hope will become clear in a moment, that I wish to think global, but act very much local. In other words, I am interested in find ways of making sense of those global skills behind the proverbial classroom doors of any classroom. That's, in a sense, the whole point, isn't it? Trying to see, if and if so, how this can be done with particular real learners. So that's my plan for the next 50 minutes or so. But before I begin for real, I just want to say one thing about myself, which is that in my capacity as a teacher trainer, and particularly as a EOT consultant for Macmillan Education, I am very privileged in that I have a chance to observe a lot of great colleagues in action. Through the class observation projects and other sorts of consultancy projects that I have done over the years. And I have grown to sort of think of myself more and more like a sponge, somebody who sort of absorbs other people's ideas and then tries to give them back to colleagues in situations like today. So I hope that what you're going to see will be relevant, but if you do like those ideas and examples, please remember that those are ideas that have already been tried and tested by other colleagues, other teachers in their own local context. And that, I think, is what makes them so powerful. Now, returning to the sort of very beginning, I wonder if any of you still remember the abstract for this session, the one that I sent over to Misha, and I hope it got circulated in a way of inviting you to this session. In this abstract, I argue that those so-called global skills, or sometimes also called 21st century skills, have become a truly topical issue in our field, in the field of English language teaching and learning in recent years. And perhaps part of the reason why this has happened is a certain connection that has been forged between the idea of developing those so-called global skills on the one hand, and the whole context of so-called sustainable development goals for education that was promoted, has been promoted by a number of key international institutions and organizations, such as United Nations, such as OECD, such as various European organizations as well. This context is something which is, on the one hand, very, very exciting. It broadens the scope of responsibility, potential topics, etc., that could become the substance of what we do with those teenagers. But as I say in the second half of my abstract, potentially it also is an added challenge for us as already very busy teachers. Now, are you busy? Just tell me in the chat. Do you feel that even without adding any sort of new agendas. Already quite a busy person preparing classes, marking, etc. Well, I can see that that I am striking a note which is perhaps not a very remote from your everyday experience. So that's precisely the kind of thinking that I have about those global skills. I am a little worried initially, seeing all the interesting new ideas floating about. I am a little iffy and a little worried about just how a normal practicing teacher is supposed to cope with all of those new agendas, combined with all the normal duties that teachers need to perform. I can see that a lot of you in the chat are now saying exactly, yes. So, I just wanted to make this very clear at the beginning so that you don't think that, here is somebody who preaches to you from, a remote country and just tries to add things onto your otherwise very crowded plate already. I hope that in a moment I will try and persuade you that there is indeed a potential challenge, but there is also, if you're smart about it, a very sensible way to marry those new agendas with the core things that we want and should be doing as foreign language teachers. So that is my plan for now, about 45 minutes. And to sort of substantiate this even further, I would like to now present you with a little puzzle. The puzzle is to do with this rather large number, 344 million. What could this possibly stand for, do you think, this number? 344 million what? I'll give you a chance to maybe make a wild guess. Words, but words where, give me more. English speakers, interesting. There are actually more than 344 million. According to recent data, there are about 2 billion speakers of English, including, of course, speakers of English as a foreign language. Ideas, English teachers, that's lovely. Okay, well, you're giving me all kinds of great suggestions. Nobody so far has actually hit children. You wish there are a lot more. Okay, well, thanks for all the trying. Actually, the number, that gigantic number I am showing you, stands for something else completely. Take a look. There is actually a hint in the slide, that logo of the Google browser, and the logo is a hint because you see, several months ago, when I was preparing the first draft of this session, I performed a Google search for the following buzzword, or rather, I should say, buzz phrase. The phrase is UN Sustainable Development Goals. That phrase that I actually used in the abstract for this session. I wonder how familiar you are with this whole story and with this whole agenda. I am giving you here the result that I got on page 1 of my browser screen. Remember, I am Polish, therefore, my screen looked, was given in Polish, but nevertheless, apart from the phrase translated into Polish as cele zrównoważonego rozwoju, you have got in the bottom half of the slide the beginning of a whole picture, a rather famous infographic that was drafted based on the agenda of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals for Education and beyond that was formulated by United Nations. And there are 344 million hits on Google with that phrase. That in itself, I think, is rather telling, isn't it? By the way, it's enough to start typing in Google the word sustainable, and immediately, as you can see, what you get as the first prompt in Google is development goals. And, you know, some other variants of this as well, as you can see, but generally, it obviously is a very hot phrase, yeah, the word sustainable. And, you know, just so hot, I will show you first of all that famous infographic. So the complete United Nations agenda for the world for the next couple of decades includes those so-called 17 sustainable development goals. Now, if you look at those goals briefly now, I hope that your conclusion will be similar to my initial conclusion about them, which is that they are certainly very, very wide-ranging and very, very ambitious, aren't they? Quality education, gender equality. I'm just quoting, you know, some of them. What is it? Equality of life below water, peace, justice, strong institutions. And, you know, I could go on and on and on. Zero hunger, no poverty. You see, sounds like an agenda for a universally happy world. Now, you know, when faced with that sort of agenda, being a normal language teacher working in Georgia, I think you can be well justified in thinking, but how can I possibly and meaningfully contribute in my daily teaching to those super ambitious global goals? Are you thinking that? You know, that's what I meant when I said that they are ambitious, but perhaps sound slightly far-fetched. Okay. I can also see some comments along these lines in the chat at the moment. Thank you for them very much. Now, just to substantiate this idea of those sustainable goals really being very topical, you know what? I was on a plane a few months ago. It was a Wizz Air flight. And as I was, you know, a little bored on that flight, I started browsing through one of those in-flight magazines that airlines prepare. And that particular airline, Wizz Air, happened to devote almost an entire issue of that particular in-flight magazine to the issue of sustainability. And as you can see, the magazine, I produced a few snapshots from that magazine. It opened with an article, obviously a promotional article for the airline itself, in which they boast of having created the position of a sustainability manager at Wizz Air. And notice on the left-hand side, they have the slogan about flying in the most sustainable way. Now, it goes on. I'll show you. You know, in that same magazine, there was another article in which, look, yeah, they talk about how a person can be a more sustainable traveler. You see, yet another collocation with the adjective sustainable. So we have a sustainability manager. Now we have got a sustainable traveler. Goes on, look, same in-flight magazine. Now, an article, you know, like is often the case in those magazines, an article discussing various opportunities for travel. Yes, sustainable society, absolutely. Tamar, very good point. Look, that bit about Copenhagen, it says that they are striving to create a menu that will be as sustainable as possible. So a sustainable menu, you see? Now, on the right-hand side, they talk about a restaurant, and it's a butcher, as it happens. And what is this about? It's about making more sustainable and ethical food choices. You see? So obviously, this is the talk of the city, so to speak, right? You know, people talk about sustainability, promoting it all the time. And if you're thinking, okay, well, so this is in the world of business, in this particular case, an airline, an international airline, but where is the connection to education itself? Well, there you have it. In the recently published PISA Global Competences Network, where, as you can see, they discuss various types of so-called global competences. If you take a good look, you will notice the immediate connection. Have you noticed in the bottom left-hand corner, if there is a corner in a circle at all, they talk about the need to take action for collective well-being and sustainable development, you see? So there is a lot being talked about, a lot of new agendas, as I said. When you look at recent teacher training sessions from major international authors and teacher trainers, here is one example from Carol Reed, a world authority on anything to do with young learners, a super successful published author, as it happens, for Macmillan, amongst many others, and also a former president of IATEFL, International Association of Teachers of English as a Foreign Language. In a recent teacher training session, she claimed that integrating those global skills, deploying that agenda for sustainability, etc., is in fact an educational philosophy, she says. And she then goes on, as you will see in a moment, to discuss various implications of that. Now, when I listen to all of that hot talk, I cannot help, as a teacher, or perhaps on behalf of teachers, but say this, but why should it be me? What resources and what competences have I got as a teacher to actually meaningfully promote any of this behind my classroom doors? And notice, this is not simply about talking about it, but actually doing something meaningful, which will help achieve that. And, when I say this, I want to also register the following interesting development. In this profession, English language teaching, and also in the business of writing course books for English language teaching, arguably, we have come a long way since the times when books like the one on the left were published. This is actually an example. This is an example of a textbook that was published about 40 years ago. Notice that the title of that course book was simply "We Learn English." You might say, perhaps, that these were the happy times when the job of an English language teacher was, inverted commas, simply to teach language. But if you compare the way that books used to look and look now, even the very covers and the titles, there is a big difference. Take a look. To give you just one example from Macmillan, a book for younger learners, the title is no longer "We Learn English." The title is now "Global Stage," you see? It is interesting, isn't it, if you think about it like that? I'll give you another example, a teenage book now. You see? Not "We Learn English," but "Gateway to the World." Again, it does not have the word global now, but it has the word world instead. It is very clear that huge international publishers like Macmillan have responded to this agenda. in a very direct way, starting with the very phrasing of the titles, okay? And at this point, you might also say, well, and that's the way it should be. That's where I should expect the response. Because you see, a way to certainly make sense of those global skills is by imbuing a modern course book with the right sort of topics in the readings, in the listenings, in the things which students are invited to study. So now, from that perspective, if you look at a modern course book series like Gateway to the World, I think it is fair to say that there is a very obvious connection. Do you agree? Yes. And David Spencer, thank you, Tamar, for mentioning him. David has been incredibly invested, very sensitive to this idea. So I performed a little multiple matching for us here to show you that this is really going on. So I have, as you can see, pulled up 3 different headings of 3 different units from the book. And I hope that you can now already see that there is a very clear connection. The way that the David Spencer has been choosing his lead topics has very, very obvious inspiration in those Sustainable Development Goals agenda. Am I making sense to you? And, when I realized this, I thought, okay, well, this is a very legitimate, honest response, isn't it? Because now, as a language teacher, I can say, okay, so my learners, if I happen to choose this particular course series, will have a chance to study English instilled in the sort of subject matter which actually goes beyond just, trivial everyday topics and will touch upon the issues which will perhaps promote awareness, sensitivity, okay? Some sort of attitude which we would like those learners of tomorrow to develop with and through English. That is in itself, I think, a wonderful development. But I will still insist and say that this is great in the sense that the subject matter has evolved massively. But notice, if you are really being very careful about it as a language teacher with local teenagers in Kutaisi or in Gori or in Batumi or in Tbilisi, wherever, then I think you still have the right to say, okay, but what about the skills? The one that I call global or 21st century. How can I actually, even if the topics are great, even if the subject matter is very modern, how can I possibly develop the skills in a meaningful way? Not just talking about it, but actually develop those skills. And this is the second half of what I have brought for you this afternoon. I want to persuade you that the way to make sense of this is by being very smart and unselective about it. In other words, and this is my main tip, I want to try and sell to you the idea that if you want to develop a real skill, then you cannot just take all the 17 gigantic development goals and try to, make everybody sensitive and, develop the right attitude about everything, because this will be, at the end of the day, completely meaningless, okay? What you want, or at least that's what I feel as a language teacher and a consultant, is you want a very careful, principled unselection of those global skills. Pick on something which will help achieve your language teaching goals, but at the same time will promote at least a subset of that very important modern agenda. I hope that I am whetting your appetite, but you may still, and rightly so, worry and wonder, okay, but how could this possibly be done? And this is what I turn to now. I want to persuade you that this approach can actually do a lot of good when it comes to everyday teaching of English to modern teenagers. Let's take an example. Look at this photograph now, okay? This photograph that I am showing, and I hope you can see on the slide. What do you think, which technology do you think it represents? Do you have an idea? Yes, it definitely is a form of artificial intelligence. And within artificial intelligence, given that there is so much focus on the human eye in the picture, okay, so the focus on the pupil of the eye is to symbolize the fact that this is about recognition technology, in particular facial recognition technology. Okay, and imagine that as part of your teaching agenda in your English classroom, you present the can now see in what situations could facial recognition technology be useful? Could there be any problems with facial recognition technology? Well, if your teenagers are anything like the ones that I used to teach and the ones that I observe my colleagues teach these days, it is very likely that if they are presented with a topic like this, they do not necessarily and immediately have a lot of sensible things to say. Am I making sense to you? Are yours like mine as well? You give them a good topic, but the discussion does not necessarily just take off of itself straight away. Am I making sense? Yes, it could be because of the vocabulary, but it could also be because there simply aren't ideas enough for them to carry out this discussion in any kind of sensible sense. So the topic is great, it's very relevant, it's very modern, but they still need support. Do you agree? What sort of support can we offer? Here is an idea. Okay, the first part of this support is that you ask them to perform the following little trick. You want them to have some individual thinking time. You do not want them to start talking to each other or to you straight away, but rather simply have a couple of minutes of quiet processing of this information to start with. Okay? Next, you ask them to write any ideas that they have got onto a board or perhaps a large sheet of paper. It could also be, if you are in an online teaching situation, maybe a joint Google document. Yes, a bit of brainstorming, but notice that crucially now, there is some sort of place, a physical place, where those ideas are being generated together. Then you ask them to read, this is a very important moment, to read other people's ideas. Not just focus on what they have been able to think of, but crucially also lift ideas from other students. And only then do you begin a group discussion where they can react to and refine ideas, perhaps with you and other students adding things on that document, large sheet of paper, a board, or a Google document. You see? This, by the way, as perhaps you might have guessed, is part of an absolutely wonderful lesson sequence that David Spencer developed as part of the new version of the Gateway course. And if you care to look at a sample digital copy of the book, you will see that in those very freshly designed modern spreads called Great Learners, Great Thinkers, there will always be a beautiful purple box like the one on the left-hand side now, in the bottom of the slide, where a framework for such a methodology is always provided for you and for the students. And the purpose of this little methodology, if you like, is very simple, is to help your teenagers actually have something to say. Am I making sense? So notice, while you are developing that particular skill of expressing ideas, at the same time, you are also helping them with the speaking in English, and perhaps by extension in the writing in English as well. That's just one such idea. I hope I'm making sense. To substantiate this idea further, I'll show you another application of this kind of thinking. Imagine a topic like the one that I'm showing you on the slide now. It's from a different part of the course, and it's a different global topic, this time to do with sustainable food solutions. This particular little reading text finishes, as perhaps you have already noticed, finishes with a statement which potentially can lead to some sort of in-class discussion, the one that I have just underlined for you. We now need to think of different ideas that help us to throw away less food now. Very well, we need to think, but how is the question? So as you see, again, the topic itself is definitely global and modern, but in order to make this topic really come alive in the classroom, you may well need a little bit of extra support. And can I show you now, by displaying the individual bits of this particular methodology, how David Spencer, the author of the Gateway to the World series, structures this particular line of support. This particular frame or framework is called Generate, Sort, Connect, and Elaborate. And it starts with getting your teenagers to work in small groups, and then they have the following steps to take. The first step is the ideas generation stage. It's sort of similar to the one that we saw before with the topic of facial recognition technology. And it says, make a list of any ideas you can think of to waste less food. It's, as I said, quite similar to the previous framework that we looked at briefly. Now, the invitation is to sort those ideas into groups. Decide your different categories and put your ideas into the categories in diagram form. You can probably already see what sort of diagram this could be, but remember, we are doing this with teenagers for whom, even if they have seen such diagrams before, for instance, in the young learners classroom, which Gosia showed in her first session today, it is not necessarily true that they are capable of actually developing those diagrams on their own and actually putting in real ideas into those diagrams yet. So once they've started on that project, you ask them in stage 3 to connect any ideas from different categories that they think might have some kind of link. And last but not least, once all of this is in place, time may be for elaborating any of those ideas, maybe expanding, maybe taking them in new directions. And I hope that this is not too surprising. One way to run it will be in the form of an otherwise familiar spidergram. But if you are thinking, okay, well, this is, and this is the whole point of this, it is not just a standalone activity, it is part of a program that in this particular phase has got this particular type of thinking scenario presented to the learners. And as you can see, it is an integral part of yet another complete lesson that Dave Spencer has developed for this version of Gateway to the World. And if you are partial to this kind of supporting visual, supporting instruments for the learners, here is a little extra gift from me, a website which you can take a photograph of perhaps now, called Free Graphic Organizer Templates. As the name suggests, if you go to that website, you can download for free a whole range of different shapes of diagrams. So not just, the classic spidergram, but also, as you can see, even in that original photograph now, in the center of the slide, various sorts of tables, circles, etc., which you can use to reapply that idea, but for other sorts of activities as well. The link is at the bottom of the slide, and you can take a photo of it now if you wish. You will also have access to the recording, so you can copy the slide and the link later on as well. If anybody has trouble, all you need to do is drop me an email, and we'll be very happy to share any of the materials that you like from this session as well. But can I remind you why I am doing this? This second example, like the first, to me is a very convincing idea for how to marry this high-class agenda of global skills on the one hand with the reality of actually teaching English to those teens. And in this particular case, the purpose for me is, if you like, a double barrel, isn't it? On the one hand, I am addressing that global agenda, but on the other hand, I am quite simply helping them organize their ideas better for the sake of giving presentations, speaking, or perhaps a small writing forms as well. If you think that those were two sensible examples, here is a third example. As you can see, I am building up to a certain climax, but let me first give you that third example because I think it's really lovely. It says here, think of different situations where you need to make new friends. Make a list. Okay, so what could such situations be? Dave gives a couple of examples, like starting a new school, moving to a new town. Can you think of any other situations like this? A different situation where you need to make new friends. Yes, you go on holiday, you go to a party, you travel to a different place for whatever reason. You go to a music festival, perhaps. Exactly. Lots of ideas like this. To some people, it's a joy, isn't it? Starting a new job. Yes, going on a summer camp. Brilliant. Okay. Lovely ideas. Thanks a lot. Okay. Do you agree that there are people, including teenagers, for whom a situation like this, meeting new people, is just a joy, and they like, you know, fish in water. They just love the idea and they take to it without a second thought. To others, it actually is a mixed blessing where, you know, yes, it's exciting, but there are also various sorts of issues arising. So how can we talk about a situation like this in a structured, coherent way? Here is a third example from Dave Spencer, and this idea really lovely, as you can see, with a fantastic visual in the middle, you know, representing the sides of the world. And indeed, they code like, you know, east, west, north, and south. They code 4 different aspects of that particular problem, meeting new people. Okay, what 4 aspects? Well, there is definitely the excitement part of it, right? So what do you find exciting about meeting new friends? Okay, but equally, what worries might you have if you are in a situation where you're meeting new friends? List 1 or 2 ideas. I know it's a little wow, isn't it, Irma? Because it's a really lovely idea, visual and very persuasive. Now, for N in the top, what might, I'm sorry, first an S. What steps would you need to take in order to cope with that situation? Make 1 or 2 suggestions. Yeah, I love this as well. And N, finally N, the N is, oh, sorry, I've lost it. N is for needs, okay? So what would you need to know, for instance, in order to be able to cope with the situation better? Now, I hope you can see how a global question like, you know, how does it feel to meet new friends becomes a completely structured framework for getting teenagers to say what they feel in a much more coherent way. Do you agree? Now, I hope I won't surprise you if I say that I am lifting this great idea from yet another spread of this type which Dave has developed. And the point is, as I already said, to help the teenagers not just deal with this kind of interpersonal, social, emotional learning skill, okay, but also to talk about this in a coherent way in English, because I'm an English teacher and I want to make sure that what I contribute will also help develop their English communicative skills. Now, if you have been thinking this is a rather interesting approach, well, I have to do a bit of party spoiling here. Dave Spencer himself did not come up with this whole idea originally. The original source of inspiration is an absolutely phenomenal project called Visible Thinking Routines. It was originally developed at Harvard University, and there is still a great website resource which discusses the approach and gives a lot of extra materials. This is where Dave got his inspiration from, if you are interested. Again, I am giving you a website link at the bottom of the slide, so if you can, make a photo of it for later use. But I also want to show you what this website looks like, because as you can see, it has got a number of really interesting resources. N, Nino, stood for needs. So what do you need, for instance, what do you need to know? Or what do you need to do in order to cope with the situation, in our case, of meeting new friends? There is also a very, very good book reference called Making Thinking Visible, which is a written up version of this original project. The book is really worth looking at because it gives a huge, a very systematic foundation to this whole idea of giving learners, teenage learners in particular, or young adults, a whole range of what came to be known as thinking frames. In other words, certain methods for thinking in a way which is coherent, systematic, even critical in places. And this kind of approach has already inspired a lot of wonderful teachers to come up with their own versions of those frames. And remember when I told you at the beginning that I'm like a sponge, lifting ideas from other colleagues, I want to share some of those ideas with you now in the final part of the session. So imagine once again that you have got a topic that you want to develop with your teenagers, like this one. Artificial intelligence is going to make most people jobless. Imagine that you give that kind of topic to your teenagers to discuss. Well, I suggest to you that unless your teenagers are, again, very different from the ones that I have come across, that it's not enough to just throw even a good topic like this. It's a good idea to give them some structure. So here is an idea for one such structure that I'm lifting from a Polish colleague of mine. And this idea is called OJE. OJE. What does it stand for? Well, it stands for three things, that a teenager needs to do in response to that statement. Are you with me? The first thing is they have to give their opinion. AI is going to make a lot of people jobless. What is your opinion? Well, if you're a teenager, your opinion could be something like, I don't know. Well, I'm not sure. Or perhaps. Okay? Notice this is what a lot of teenagers would be very happy to finish with. But no. In this scenario, you are okay to give that opinion, but you need next to provide at least one extra sentence of justification. So if you say, I'm not sure, you need to say at least one more sentence to explain why you are not sure. Or it depends. Oh, yes, Maggie, a brilliant one. Yes, it always depends, doesn't it? Okay. So yes, you can say it depends, but you still need to add one more sentence explaining why you've said that it depends. Does it make sense? And notice, to really push them, not only justification, but one extra sentence where you provide one example of what you meant in your previous sentence. So, opinion, justification, example. How'd you like it? I'll sip a bit of coffee. Yes, Katuna, that's precisely this. There is no way for a student to escape from a speaking activity. I love that comment. Absolutely. And notice that this is such a great idea. I really think it's a great idea, not mine, it's Marta's, that I suggest to you, we could even make this into a classroom poster. Put it on the wall in a corner of your classroom. And wherever you start a speaking activity, you say OJE today. Okay? So whoever speaks, yes, they can make even a short opinion, but they need to add one more sentence with justification and one extra sentence with example. Okay? OJE. All right. Now, I see that a lot of you seem to like this idea. So I have two more gifts for you, because you see, I know a teenager. A teenager originally they will probably hate this idea. Do you agree? Because it pushes them to say more, not just it depends. After a little time, they will get to like it because they will see that it actually helps them say things in a more coherent way. And then, after another little while, they will get bored with this idea, okay? Because they think, oh, now it's become monotonous. Ah, yeah, another OJE. At this point, you may consider changing the format. Are you with me? So no more OJE, okay? From now on, maybe for another month, we are playing with the following frame. This time, the frame is called S-A-E-I. S stands for statement. Okay, so here is the statement. You can provide a short answer or reaction to that statement. But notice there is also EI, which is extra information. So again, notice you can repeat the original statement, make a short reaction, and then provide some extra information. It's not identical to the previous one because you do not want to make it completely mechanical, but it's also a way, as one of you said before, it's a way for them never to escape. Yeah, they have to provide a slightly more structured speaking reaction. Okay, you like it? All right, would you like one more? I have one more that I lifted from yet another colleague. This one here is from Carolina, a great colleague of mine. And I'm looking at the clock and I still have got a couple of minutes left, so I can show you my third idea. But can I just remind you that you apply that idea, that frame, to any discussion topic that happens to be on your agenda. Okay? So you take a topic like this here, and you get your students to respond to this topic using this particular frame. Okay, if they get bored with the second frame, for the third month, you can take that second poster off the wall, and you can tell them, from today, you have got 3. And we are playing with 3 from today. Would you like to know what 3 stands for? Are you ready? This is from an anonymous workshop participant, which means somebody gave me this idea during a workshop and I forgot in my stupidity to ask for his or her name. So she or he is now anonymous. If you have another great idea like this one and you send it to me, please remember to tell me who you are so I can quote you properly. Okay, back to 3. Idea 3 is the following. Here is my fact, okay, like a statement or somebody else's quote. Here is a fact. To that fact, you have to give your reason. Then you need to provide one example. Then you need to provide another example. And when you do, you are free to go. How do you like that? That's a very teenage thing. So a fact, a reason, one example, second example, you're free to go. Very teenage. I hope that you've noticed that in a sense, the frame does not matter. What matters is the principle of getting them through, a visual, through an acronym, through a good lesson sequence to simply structure their thinking in a better way than that they perhaps so far have done. And if you are able to do that, my argument is you're really gradually developing a skill, a global skill of thinking in a better way than perhaps they used to before they started with your course. Now, what I'm showing you here is that it will only make a real difference if it's not a one-off. It's not just a great lesson that you did once a semester. It has to be a systematic program. Ideally, this program should go on not just for one semester or even 1 year, but throughout the whole time that they have with you as part of your, their being in school with you. And this is, why I'm now showing you yet another time examples from a pre-intermediate and an intermediate level of Gateway to the World to show you how serious Dave Spencer in particular has been in the series about developing that crucial 21st century skill, which is the skill of thinking. And of course, because he's such a wonderful English teacher, he is also developing that skill as part of a skill of teaching them better English, of course. You see? And this is my response to the idea of how you can do this in a way that will be realistic, practical, and will allow you to stick to your core competences, which is teaching them English, but at the same time, with the help of a great book, perhaps, you will achieve something else. In our case, you will gradually get them to become better thinkers. Okay? Now, to say goodbye, because my time is basically up, I just want to show you an idea for how you can complete a unit of work. Okay? Imagine, for instance, that you are finishing a whole unit, or maybe a lesson, or maybe you have finished reading a good text with your learners, or maybe you have finished watching something interesting and you want to summarize it really nicely. Okay? Here is an idea. Idea 1, choose one sentence from that text, whatever that text is, okay, which you think talks about a key concept. Number 2, another variation, and maybe with a different text, choose a phrase from that text or listening or film, that you think provoked you, was interesting to you, okay? And share it. Number 3, third variation, very simple, just pick one word that has stuck with you and to you is central to the idea of that text or listening or film or whatever. This is crucial. Number 4, whether you are choosing one sentence, one phrase, one word, the important thing is for those students to share with one another. And you know why? Because in this way, you will bring home something very, very important. And that is that sentence or phrase or word is not going to be the same for different students. Okay? In other words, you raise awareness of the fact that people will respond to the same input in very, very different ways. Now, imagine, for instance, that we do this very thing now with the content of this webinar. Are you with me? So if I told you now, pick one phrase from my webinar, okay, which is really important to you. Look, somebody is saying sustainability. Okay. Anybody? Any global skills? Okay. Sustainable development. OJE. Great thinkers. You see? So many wonderful answers. Free. Visual thinking. All right. Notice as many answers, as many people. Okay? Part of that kind of agenda. Now, to say goodbye, a quote which I have lifted from Dave Spencer's teacher training session, which I think is just such a beautiful lead theme for any wonderful modern teacher. I think, therefore I am, the old Greek saying, but I think, therefore I am learning. And could I say to this, I think through and in English, therefore I am learning English in a better manner. I hope this made sense to you. If it has, I would be delighted to stay in touch. But I'm giving you my email address now on the slide. I am also on Facebook and on LinkedIn. So if you friend me on Facebook, just writing Grzegorz Spiewak, or on LinkedIn, I'll be very happy to connect up so that we can stay in touch. If you would like any of my slides from today, again, if you drop me an email and ask for the slides for the Global Skills session, I'll be very happy to send them to you. Thank you very much for being such a wonderful, energetic audience. And that's all from me, and over to Misha.
Grzegorz, thank you so much. It was a wonderful session. As always, we need to bring you to Georgia as soon as possible.
Well, it's a topic which is very easy to feel very strongly about. But, as I said at the beginning, and a lot of the colleagues seemed to agree, a lot of those modern ideas need this kind of critical examination in order to understand what it is that a normal teacher can do with them, right? Because otherwise we just talk, we talk critical skills, we talk sustainability, we talk communication, creativity, but how do we actually do it? And that, I think, is one interesting way to think things through. If you have got a wonderful piece of material to guide you, like, that Global Gateway to the World series, to take one example.
Absolutely. So I would like to say a very big thank you to all the teachers, all the participants joining and commenting and sending wonderful messages. I thank you so much. It says it is Friday. It is beginning of the weekend. I hope you will spend your weekend very thoughtfully, and you will take all these wonderful ideas to the classroom from Monday. Dear Grzegorz, dear Gosha, thank you so much for being with us, for conducting
It's been a great pleasure.
Wonderful sessions. And again, yeah, this has been wonderful. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
We are still reading the thanks, so let's wait maybe one more minute. It's such